die! All die! All die! The guard shouted as the soldiers raised their guns. The line of prisoners of war, clothed just in their rags, exhausted after a hard day's work, dripping with sweat in the 49-degree heat with humidity, sweat dripping down, bugs crawling on their skin, sickness in their veins. They hadn't eaten well for weeks and maybe months. Forced to do back-breaking work in the mountains, in the jungle, to build a railroad for the enemy. These soldiers thought to themselves, maybe death is better than continuing this work in this life. They have been accused of stealing a shovel. After work, they were all supposed to put their tools in a pile and they were counted, and today they were one shovel short. But who would steal a shovel? Where would they even put such a thing? And yet the guards were threatening them all with death. They thought about how they got here. It's World War II, 1943. The Japanese soldiers had taken prisoners of war, and because of their emperor, they were trying to build a railroad that connected Siam and Burma. They had one group in the north and one group in the south, and they were supposed to meet in the middle. Cutting their way through the jungle, blasting through rocks, but they couldn't waste their own people or soldiers for this work. Instead, they had plenty of prisoners of war to spare. They didn't have to feed them much. They didn't have to give them clothes or shoes or even good equipment. If they got sick, they were killed. If they got too weak to function, they were killed. If on the march they fell down injured, they were killed. You didn't need these people that couldn't work and couldn't continue the mission to connect this death railway. So why would anyone steal a shovel? At the last moment, one man stepped forward. It was me. Now, the soldiers all had their guns ready to shoot, but they didn't want to waste bullets. So they beat and kicked that man to death in front of everyone else. Now, as they returned to their camp, the guards decided to count the equipment once again. It turned out all the shovels were there. They just miscounted. The other prisoners of war began to discuss among themselves. Why would anybody say it was me? Why would somebody sacrifice themselves like this? There was one clue. That Scottish soldier, ex-soldier, prisoner of war, he was a religious type. He was somebody that would pray and he would quote these scripture verses. And yet, how could anybody have religion in a place like this? This was the closest to hell that any of them had ever been. In fact, with the amounts of food and ration, everyone became like animals, stealing, lying, cheating, doing whatever they could because they knew that only the fittest would survive. And yet this one man had stepped forward to take the place of everyone else. And so they began to discuss. And they said, is there something that we could do to, like the Christian prayer, the Lord's Prayer, to say, God, may your kingdom come on earth as it is in heaven? Could they bring heaven to a place that resembled hell? So they tried. The crazy thing that happened, they started forgiving one another. They started helping the sick, helping those that fell on the marches. They began to forgive their captors. They started what they called Jungle University. where they taught each other mathematics, natural sciences, and in 9 different languages. There were some artists that started to use the different berries and leaves that they found and started to paint pictures. One had a photographic memory and started writing the works of Bach. And then they started beginning to make instruments out of the things that they found, little pipes and things, and perform for their guards. They began to pray, and to pray not only for rescue and the end of the war, but even to pray for these captors, these guards that were torturing them. At the end of this time, one of the prisoners that was released wrote a book. It was later made into a movie. This is not just some story. This is a story about people in the worst situation possible. And yet, together, and with faith, and with love and forgiveness, they were able to transform hell into heaven. Thank you very much.